The canvas glared at Alex Harper, its unfinished waves a silent indictment. In his cramped Brooklyn apartment, the air heavy with turpentine and the acrid tang of burnt coffee, he stood frozen, paintbrush dangling from his fingers. The seascape on the easel was a chaotic swirl of cobalt and charcoal, a storm that refused to resolve into art. At 29, Alex was still chasing the title of painter, but the world seemed hell-bent on labeling him a failure instead. His jeans, splattered with paint like a thrift store Pollock, hung loose on his lanky frame, and his dark hair stuck out in defiant tufts, as if mocking any attempt at order. His phone buzzed on a table cluttered with sketches, empty ramen packets, and a chipped mug crusted with coffee stains. He ignored it, dipping his brush into a smear of ultramarine, but the buzzing persisted, relentless as a debt collector. With a groan, he wiped his hands on a rag stiff with dried acrylic and grabbed the phone. The screen flashed Mom, and Alex's stomach twisted. Diane Harper's calls were never casual, they were summonses, wrapped in warmth but laced with the weight of expectation. He tapped play, her voicemail cutting through the room's silence. "Alex, honey, it's me. I know you're busy with your art, but you have to come to dinner tomorrow. It's important. Ryan's wedding is next week, and we need to be a family for once. Please, don't make this difficult." The message ended with a sigh, the kind that carried years of disappointment, the kind that whispered, "Why can't you be more like Ryan?" Alex tossed the phone onto the couch, where it sank into a pile of hoodies and dog-eared sketchpads. "A family," he muttered, mimicking her tone. The Harpers hadn't been a family since he and Ryan were kids, racing bikes down their Greenwich Street, before Ryan became the golden son and Alex the family's afterthought. Ryan, 34, was a lawyer with a corner office, a six-figure salary, and a fiancée, Elena, who looked like she'd walked out of a Vogue spread. Alex, meanwhile, was scraping by on freelance graphic design gigs, his paintings unsold, his dreams fading like the light through his cracked skylight. He glanced at his laptop, opened to Instagram, where Ryan's life glowed in curated perfection. A photo of Ryan and Elena clinking champagne glasses at a rooftop bar, captioned, "To Forever." Another of Ryan shaking hands with a client, his suit sharper than a knife. Alex's own feed was a mess of half-finished sketches, sarcastic memes, and a blurry shot of a bodega cat. His last post, a detail of the seascape, had 17 likes, mostly from art school buddies and Mia, his best friend, who slung coffee at a shop down the block. The apartment was a testament to his struggles, a flickering fluorescent light, a thrift store easel wobbling under the canvas, a stack of unpaid bills tucked under a mug. 6 months ago, he'd had a gallery show, his big break, but only one painting sold, to Mia, who'd hung it in her shop and probably regretted the $200. Alex's dream of seeing his name in a Soho gallery felt like a cruel joke. He sank onto the couch, running a hand through his hair. Tomorrow's dinner was at his parents' house in Connecticut, a 2-hour train ride he could barely afford. He hadn't been back since Christmas, when Ryan had smirked over pie and called his art a cute hobby. Their father, George, a retired judge, had barely looked up from his whiskey, while Diane changed the subject to Ryan's latest case. Going back felt like walking into a trap, but skipping it would only prove Ryan right, that Alex was unreliable, a dropout, a disappointment. His phone buzzed again. A text from Mia, "You going to that fancy family dinner or what? Don't let Ryan win." Alex smiled, the knot in his chest easing slightly. Mia, with her purple-streaked hair and zero tolerance for nonsense, was his anchor. He typed back, "Not sure I can handle Ryan's smug face." Her reply was instant, "Wear your rattiest jeans. Make him squirm." He laughed, the sound swallowed by the apartment's silence. By the next afternoon, Alex was on a Metro North train, the city's jagged skyline giving way to Connecticut's manicured hills. He wore his least paint-stained jeans and a faded flannel, his only nod to civility a pair of clean sneakers. His sketchbook sat untouched in his lap, his pencil idle. Instead, he stared out the window, memories of childhood competitions with Ryan flickering like a faded film reel. Ryan winning the science fair, Ryan's valedictorian speech, Ryan's law school acceptance. Alex's victories, art contests, a mural project, were always smaller, overshadowed. He'd once thought he could outrun Ryan's shadow, but every family gathering reminded him how far he'd fallen behind. The Harper house was a colonial behemoth in Greenwich, all white columns and ivy that screamed old money. Alex rang the doorbell, the chime echoing like a courtroom gavel. Diane answered, her blonde hair swept into a flawless updo, her smile equal parts relief and worry. "Alex, you're here," she said, pulling him into a hug that smelled of Chanel No. 5. "I was afraid you'd get stuck in the city." "Wouldn't miss it," he said, the lie slipping out easily. The foyer gleamed with polished wood and family photos, most showcasing Ryan, graduating Yale, shaking hands with judges, smiling with Elena at some gala. Alex's high school art award was tucked in a corner, half hidden by a potted fern. In the dining room, Ryan stood by the bar, pouring wine with the ease of a man who owned every room he entered. He was taller than Alex, his gym-honed frame filling out a tailored suit, his watch glinting under the chandelier. Well, Ryan said, his tone a mix of amusement and disdain. "The artist graces us with his presence." "Couldn't resist the free food," Alex shot back, forcing a grin. He caught George's eye at the head of the table, his father's silver hair and stern face giving him the air of a judge even in retirement. George nodded, his only acknowledgement, then returned to his whiskey. Diane bustled in with a roast, her chatter about the wedding filling the silence. "Elena's been a dream," she said, setting down a platter. "She's handling everything, the vineyard, the flowers. You'll love her, Alex. She's so sophisticated." The dinner started civilly, Diane asking about Alex's projects. He mumbled about a new series, dodging details, knowing they'd lead to pitying looks. Ryan, predictably, hijacked the conversation, regaling them with a story about a case he'd won, defending a corporate client in a lawsuit. "It's all about strategy," he said, swirling his wine. "Knowing when to push, when to hold back. Not that you'd get it, Alex. Still playing with paints, right?" The jab landed like a blade. Alex gripped his fork, his knuckles whitening. "It's called art, Ryan. Not that you'd know." Ryan smirked, leaning forward. "Art? Come on, man. You're 29, living in a dump, scraping by on freelance gigs. When are you going to grow up?" "Ryan," Diane said, her voice sharp, but he waved her off. "I'm serious," Ryan pressed, his eyes gleaming. "You're a disgrace to this family, Alex. No ambition, no future. You think Dad's proud of you? You think anyone is?" The word disgrace hit like a fist to the chest. Alex's face burned, his vision narrowing to Ryan's smug expression. He wanted to flip the table, to scream, to prove he wasn't nothing. Instead, he stood, his chair screeching against the floor. "You don't get to decide what I am," he said, voice low but trembling. He looked at Diane, her eyes wide with shock, and George, staring into his glass like it held the answers. "Thanks for dinner." He was out the door before anyone could stop him, the cool night air hitting his face like a slap. He walked to the train station, Ryan's words echoing, "Disgrace, disgrace, disgrace." By the time he reached his apartment, the city's hum was a dull roar outside his window. He sank onto the couch, staring at the unfinished seascape, its waves churning with his anger. Was Ryan right? Was he chasing a pipe dream? His phone lit up. "Mia again, how'd it go? You okay?" He didn't reply, not yet. Instead, he pulled the wedding invitation from a drawer, its gold script mocking him. The rehearsal dinner was in 2 days at a vineyard, the kind of place Ryan belonged. Alex had planned to skip it, to avoid another round of judgment. But now, Ryan's voice was a dare, a challenge to show up, to fight back. He called Mia, his voice raw. "Ryan called me a disgrace," he said. "Right in front of Mom and Dad." Mia didn't miss a beat. "He's a prick, Alex. You're not a disgrace, you're an artist. Go to that rehearsal dinner. Show him you're not invisible." Alex laughed, hollow but real. "In what, my paint-stained jeans?" "Damn right," Mia said. Own it. Make him choke on his ego. He hung up, staring at the canvas. The stormy waves seemed alive now, pulsing with his resolve. He wasn't sure what he'd do at the rehearsal, confront Ryan, ignore him, or just survive, but he had to go. He picked up his brush, adding a single stroke of white to the canvas, a slash of light through the storm. "I'm not a disgrace," he whispered, the words a vow. He packed a bag, tossing in a borrowed suit from Mia's brother, the fabric stiff and foreign. His eyes fell on an old sketch, a family portrait from years ago, Ryan smirking, Diane fussing, George distant, Alex fading into the background. He tore it in half, Ryan's face crumpling. Tomorrow, he'd face his brother again. Tomorrow, he'd start to prove him wrong. The vineyard sprawled under a sky bruised with twilight, its rows of vines stitched with fairy lights that glowed like captured stars. Alex Harper stood at the edge of the gravel lot, feeling like a trespasser in his borrowed suit, the stiff fabric chafing against his skin. The suit, a hand-me-down from Mia's brother, was a size too big, and his sneakers, his one rebellion against the formality, scuffed the dirt as he shifted his weight. At 29, he was used to feeling out of place, but the grandeur of Ryan's rehearsal dinner at this Connecticut estate made him feel like a smudge on a polished canvas. The air smelled of crushed grapes and rosemary, and laughter spilled from the open-air pavilion where guests in tailored suits and shimmering dresses mingled like they belonged. Alex adjusted his tie, which felt more like a noose, and scanned the crowd for Ryan. His brother's insult, "You're a disgrace to this family," still burned, a wound that had festered since the family dinner 2 nights ago. He'd almost skipped this, but Mia's voice echoed in his head, "Show him you're not invisible." So here he was, ready to face Ryan's smugness and prove something. What, exactly, he wasn't sure. A figure emerged from the crowd, moving with a grace that seemed to hush the chatter. Elena, Ryan's fiancée, wore a sleek emerald dress that caught the light like a jewel. Her dark hair was swept into a loose bun, and her smile was warm but sharp, like she knew secrets no one else did. Alex braced himself for a polite dismissal, the kind reserved for the black sheep brother. Instead, she stopped in front of him, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Your Honor," she said, her voice playful but clear, loud enough for nearby guests to turn. "You made it. I'm so glad." Alex froze, his mouth half open. "Your Honor?" The words hung in the air, absurd and surreal. He glanced around, expecting a judge or someone important behind him, but there was only a trellis dripping with vines. A few guests raised eyebrows, their champagne flutes pausing mid-sip. Ryan, standing by a table with a group of suited men, shot a glance their way, his jaw tightening. I'm just Alex," he stammered, his face heating. "No honor here." Elena's smile didn't waver. She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Oh, I know who you are, Alex Harper." She winked, then glided back into the crowd, leaving him rooted to the spot, his mind spinning. Was it a joke? A mistake? Or something else entirely? He shook it off, grabbing a glass of wine from a passing waiter to steady his nerves. The pavilion was a spectacle, long tables draped in white linen, centerpieces of roses and eucalyptus, a string quartet playing something soft and classical. Alex felt like he'd wandered into one of Ryan's Instagram posts, all polish and pretense. He spotted his parents across the room, Diane fussing with a floral arrangement, George nursing a whiskey, his judge's demeanor intact even in a tux. Neither acknowledged him, which was fine. After the dinner, he wasn't expecting warmth. Finding his seat at a table near the back, Alex was relieved to be far from Ryan's orbit. Next to him was Sophie, a cousin he vaguely remembered from childhood Thanksgivings. Her blonde curls bounced as she leaned in, her voice a stage whisper. "You look like you're about to bolt," she said, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Can't say I blame you. This place is so..." "Ryan." Alex snorted, grateful for the levity. "Yeah, it's like his ego rented the vineyard." Sophie laughed, sipping her wine. "He's insufferable. Always has been. But Elena? She's different." Did you know she used to clerk for some big-shot judge? Quit right before she met Ryan. Nobody knows why. She raised an eyebrow, like she was dangling bait. Alex's mind snagged on the detail. A judge? Could that explain the Your Honor comment? He filed it away, his curiosity piqued. She seems nice, he said cautiously, not wanting to admit how much her greeting had thrown him. Nice, sure, Sophie said, lowering her voice. But she's got Ryan on a leash. He's all charm until you cross him. I heard he's been weird about some case lately. Keep snapping at her over nothing. Before Alex could press her, the clink of a spoon against glass silenced the room. Ryan stood at the head table, Elena beside him, his arm around her like a trophy. Thank you all for being here, he said, his voice smooth as polished marble. This wedding is a new chapter, and Elena and I are thrilled to share it with you. The guests applauded, but Alex's eyes were on Elena. She smiled, but there was a tightness to it, like she was playing a part. As Ryan droned on about their perfect future, Alex caught a snippet of conversation from a nearby table, two men in suits, one muttering about a case file that can't get out. The other glanced at Ryan, then whispered, "He's got it handled. Harrow's in his pocket." The name, Harrow, rang a bell, but Alex couldn't place it. He leaned closer, but the string quartet drowned out the rest. Dinner was served, a parade of plates with artfully arranged salmon and microgreens. Alex picked at his food, his mind on Elena's words. Your Honor. It wasn't just the phrase, it was the way she'd said it, like she saw something in him that his family never had. He scanned the room, catching her eye across the pavilion. She raised her glass slightly, a gesture meant only for him, and his pulse quickened. What was her game? As the toasts began, Elena stood, her voice clear and commanding. To Ryan, for building a life I'm proud to join, she said, her smile radiant. Then, her gaze flickered to Alex. And to family, those who create, who endure, who rise above. The words felt pointed, like a message wrapped in velvet. The guests clapped, oblivious, but Alex felt a spark of something, hope, maybe, or suspicion. After dinner, the crowd spilled onto the vineyard's lawn, the air cool and scented with earth. Alex slipped away from the chatter, needing space to process. He wandered to the edge of the vines, the stars above sharp against the dark. Footsteps crunched behind him, and he turned to find Elena, her dress shimmering in the moonlight. Sorry about earlier, she said, her voice soft but deliberate. The Your Honor thing. I didn't mean to embarrass you. Alex shoved his hands in his pockets, wary. So what was it? A joke? She hesitated, her eyes searching his. Not a joke. A recognition. I see how Ryan treats you, Alex. How they all do. You're more than they think. You have dignity, even if they don't see it. Her words hit harder than he expected, stirring a warmth he hadn't felt in years. You don't even know me, he said, his voice rough. I know enough, she replied, stepping closer. I saw your painting online, the one in that coffee shop. It's raw, honest. Not like the games people play here. She glanced back at the pavilion, where Ryan was laughing with his colleagues, his voice too loud. Before Alex could respond, Ryan's silhouette appeared, his steps heavy on the gravel. Elena, there you are, he said, his tone clipped. He barely glanced at Alex, but his eyes narrowed. We're about to do the group photos. Let's go. Elena's expression flickered, fear, maybe, or frustration, before she nodded. Coming, she said, then turned to Alex, her voice low. Don't let him define you. She followed Ryan back to the pavilion, leaving Alex alone with the vines and a growing sense that something was off. He pulled a napkin from his pocket and a pencil stub, sketching the vineyard's silhouette, vines twisting like secrets. Elena's words echoed, "You're more than they think." But why had she said it? And what was Ryan hiding? As he traced the lines, his resolve hardened. He'd come to prove he wasn't a disgrace, but now he sensed there was more to uncover, about Elena, Ryan, and maybe even himself. Alex Harper sat hunched over a chipped table in a Greenwich coffee shop, the smell of espresso and burnt sugar a faint comfort against the storm in his head. His laptop screen glowed with an article about a case his brother Ryan had won last year, defending a pharmaceutical CEO accused of price gouging. The details were murky, evidence had vanished, witnesses recanted, but the name Judge Harrow stood out like a flare. Harrow, a former colleague of Alex's father, George, had overseen the case, and whispers of corruption clung to it like damp rot. Alex's fingers hovered over the keyboard, Elena's voice echoing from the rehearsal dinner, "Your Honor." Was it a clue? A jab? Or something deeper? He'd come to the coffee shop to think, to escape the Vineyard's suffocating elegance where Ryan's wedding loomed. The disgrace insult from 2 nights ago still stung, but Elena's words, "You're more than they think," had lit a spark. She'd called him Your Honor with purpose, and Sophie's gossip about Elena's past as a judge's clerk had Alex wondering if she knew something about Ryan's case. His phone buzzed with a text from Mia, "Find anything yet, Sherlock? Don't let Ryan Hannah's ego get to you." He smiled, typing back, "Just conspiracies and coffee." "You'd love it." Mia, his lifeline, had insisted he dig into Elena's comment. "Your Honor? That's not random," she'd said over the phone last night. "Sounds like she's trying to tell you something." Alex wasn't sure what, but the name Harrow kept nagging at him. He pulled up another article, his heart sinking. Harrow was notorious for flexible rulings, and Ryan's case had been a high-profile win under his gavel. Was Elena pointing him toward this? The coffee shop door jangled, and Mia burst in, her purple-streaked hair tucked under a beanie. "You look like you're solving world hunger," she said, dropping into the seat across from him. She slid a muffin his way. "Eat. You're too skinny." "Not hungry," Alex said, but he broke off a piece anyway. "I'm trying to figure out why Elena called me Your Honor. Sophie said she clerked for a judge before she met Ryan. Maybe Harrow." Mia's eyes widened. "The corrupt judge? Holy shit, Alex. What if she knows something about Ryan's shady-ass case?" She leaned in, her voice low. "You think he's dirty?" Alex shrugged, his stomach twisting. "I overheard some guys at the rehearsal talking about a case file Ryan's keeping quiet. Something about Harrow. It didn't sound good." Mia whistled. "Your brother's a prick and a crook? That's a twofer." She grabbed his laptop, scanning the article. "This says evidence went missing. Convenient. You gonna ask Elena about it?" "I don't know," Alex said, rubbing his eyes. "She's complicated. She said she saw my painting online, said it's honest." "But why call me that? And why's she marrying Ryan if she knows he's shady?" Mia smirked. "Maybe she's got her own game. You should talk to her." "Like, yesterday?" Alex nodded, his mind racing. He'd planned to corner Elena at the Vineyard today, but the thought of facing her made his chest tight. Her words had felt like a lifeline, but what if she was playing him? Back at the Vineyard, the wedding preparations were in full swing. Tents were going up, florists scurrying with armfuls of roses. Alex found Elena in the tasting room, arranging place cards. She wore a simple sundress, her hair loose, but her posture was tense, like she was carrying an invisible weight. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. She looked up, her smile fleeting but warm. "Alex," she said, setting down a card. "You're early. No paint on you today?" He forced a laugh, glancing at his clean jeans. "Day off." "Listen, about last night, why'd you call me Your Honor?" "It's been eating at me." Her eyes flickered with something, surprise, maybe, or caution. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I meant what I said. You have dignity, Alex." "More than," she trailed off, glancing toward the door where Ryan's voice boomed, giving orders to a caterer. "More than Ryan?" Alex pressed, his heart pounding. "Is that why you said it? Because of him?" Elena's lips parted, but she hesitated, her gaze darting away. I know about Ryan's case, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. The one with Judge Harrow. Things happened. Things that shouldn't have. Alex's breath caught. Like what? Missing evidence? Bribes? Her eyes widened, and she grabbed his arm, pulling him behind a rack of wine barrels. How do you know about that? I overheard some guys last night, he said. They said Ryan's got Harrow in his pocket. Is it true? Elena's face paled, her grip tightening. You can't say anything. Not yet. I'm trying to fix things. I saw your painting online, Alex. The one in that coffee shop. It's beautiful, raw. You're not like him. You're honest. The word hit him like a punch, echoing Ryan's disgrace. You don't know me, he said, his voice rough. Why do you care? Because I see you, she said, her eyes fierce. You create something real, not lies. I wish, she stopped, her hand dropping. I have to go. She walked away, leaving Alex reeling. Her words felt like a confession, but of what? He headed to his car, his mind a tangle of questions. If Elena knew about Ryan's corruption, why stay with him? And what did his painting have to do with it? Determined to get answers, Alex drove to Ryan's law office in Greenwich, a sleek glass building that screamed success. Ryan was in his office, surrounded by case files, his suit jacket slung over a chair. He looked up, his smirk instant. What's this? The artist paying a visit? Cut the crap, Alex said, shutting the door. What's going on with Judge Harrow? I know about the case. Missing evidence, shady deals. What did you do? Ryan's smirk vanished, his face paling. You're out of your depth, Alex. Stay out of this, or you'll ruin everything. Ruin what? Alex snapped. Your perfect life? Elena knows, doesn't she? That's why she called me Your Honor. Because I'm not a liar like you. Ryan stood, his fists clenched. You're pathetic. Chasing conspiracies because you're jealous. You're nothing, Alex. A failure. The words cut, but Alex stood his ground. I'm not the one hiding case files. What did you do, Ryan? Pay Harrow off? Ryan's eyes flashed with fury, but he didn't answer. Get out, he growled. And stay away from Elena. Alex left, his heart racing. Ryan's reaction confirmed it, there was truth to the rumors. Back at the vineyard, he found his father, George, sitting alone on a bench, staring at the horizon. George's silver hair gleamed in the sunlight, his face etched with weariness. Dad, Alex said, sitting beside him. Did you know about Ryan's case? About Harrow? George's jaw tightened, his eyes distant. I suspected, he said quietly. Harrow was my friend, but he changed. I heard things about Ryan's case, but I didn't want to believe it. Why didn't you say anything? Alex asked, his voice breaking. You're a judge. You're supposed to care about the truth. George looked at him, his eyes heavy. I wanted to protect the family. But I was wrong. You're better than us, Alex. Don't let Ryan's words define you. The admission stunned Alex, a crack in his father's stoic facade. Before he could respond, Sophie called him over, pointing to a private room where Elena was sorting decorations. Alex stepped inside, his breath catching. There, on the wall, hung one of his paintings, a vibrant seascape, bought anonymously months ago. Elena turned, her eyes wide. You bought it, Alex said, his voice barely a whisper. Why? It spoke to me, she said softly. Like you do. Alex stared at the painting, his heart pounding. Elena's words, Ryan's secrets, his father's confession, it was all unraveling. He wasn't a disgrace. He was something more. And he'd find out what. The vineyard shimmered under a golden morning sun, its rows of grapes glistening like emeralds against the Connecticut hills. Alex Harper stood outside the guest cottage, his borrowed suit replaced with a slightly less wrinkled one he'd scrounged from a thrift shop, his sneakers still a defiant choice. The wedding day buzzed around him, florists arranging roses, caterers hauling trays, guests in pastel dresses and sharp tuxes milling about. At 29, Alex felt like a smudge on this perfect canvas, but Elena's words from the rehearsal dinner, "You're more than they think," burned in his chest, a spark of defiance against Ryan's disgrace label. He'd spent the night in a cheap motel nearby, replaying Elena's moonlight confession, her admiration for his art, her unease with Ryan's world. The overheard whispers about a case file and Judge Harrow gnawed at him, hinting at Ryan's shady dealings. Alex had come to the wedding to prove he wasn't a failure, but now he sensed a bigger fight, one that might expose his brother and free Elena from whatever held her. His sketchbook, tucked in his bag, held the napkin sketch from the rehearsal, its tangled vines a map of the secrets he was determined to unravel. The ceremony was set for noon, but Alex arrived early, slipping into the Vineyard's pavilion where the reception would be held. The space was transformed, white drapes cascading from wooden beams, tables laden with crystal and eucalyptus, a dance floor gleaming under chandeliers. He spotted his painting, a bold seascape he'd brought as a wedding gift, propped on an easel near the gift table. Its stormy waves, slashed with white, felt like a declaration of his presence. He'd hesitated to bring it, fearing Ryan's mockery, but Mia's text that morning, "Show them who you are, not who Ryan isn't," had sealed his decision. Guests began to arrive, their chatter a low hum. Alex lingered near the back, avoiding his parents. Diane, in a pale blue dress, was fussing with the seating chart, while George, in a tux, stared at the Vineyard with his usual judicial distance. Alex's phone buzzed with a text from Mia, "You got this, Your Honor. Don't let Ryan ruin the vibe." He smiled, her humor a lifeline, and tucked the phone away. The ceremony unfolded under a floral arch, Elena radiant in a flowing gown, Ryan polished in a black tux. Their vows were perfect, rehearsed, but Alex caught Elena's eyes flickering to him during her "for better or worse" line, a flicker of doubt in her smile. Ryan's grip on her hand seemed too tight, his smile too sharp. Alex's gut twisted, Elena was trapped, and he wasn't sure he could help her. At the reception, the pavilion glowed with candlelight, the air thick with wine and perfume. Alex sat at a corner table, next to Sophie, the chatty cousin from the rehearsal. "You brought a painting?" she whispered, nodding at the seascape. "Bold move. Ryan's gonna hate it." Her grin was conspiratorial, but Alex only nodded, his eyes on Elena, who was circulating among guests, her laughter forced. As the toasts began, Alex's nerves tightened. He'd considered confronting Ryan about the case file but feared ruining the day. Instead, he watched as Elena stood, her glass raised. "To love," she said, her voice steady but laced with something sharp. "And to truth, which sets us free." The guests clapped, but Alex felt the words were meant for him, echoing her "Your Honor" greeting. Then came Ryan's toast. He stood, his charm dialed to 11, but his eyes were glassy from wine. "To my beautiful bride," he said, "and to a family that's finally proud of me." The jab was subtle, but Alex felt it, a reminder of disgrace. Ryan's gaze landed on the seascape, and his smile twisted. "Nice painting, Alex," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. "What is it, amateur hour at the art fair?" The pavilion went silent, forks pausing, eyes darting to Alex. His face burned, but before he could respond, Elena stood, her chair scraping the floor. "Enough, Ryan," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "That painting is art. It's honest, unlike you." The crowd gasped. Ryan's smile froze. "Elena, sit down," he hissed, but she didn't. "I know about the case file," she said, her voice rising. "Judge Harrow, the suppressed evidence, the payoffs. You think you're untouchable, but you're not." She turned to the guests, her eyes blazing. "He's been lying, to me, to you, to everyone." Chaos erupted. Guests whispered, some stood, others grabbed their phones. Ryan's face paled, his hand slamming the table. "You don't know what you're talking about," he snapped, but his voice shook. Diane's hand flew to her mouth, and George's whiskey glass stopped mid-sip, his eyes narrowing like he'd known this was coming. Elena turned to Alex, her voice softening. "Your Honor," she said, the words deliberate, "because you stood tall when no one else did." The guests murmured, some assuming Alex was a judge, others catching the metaphor. Alex's heart pounded, a mix of pride and shock. Ryan stormed out, shoving past a waiter, the pavilion buzzing with shock. Elena followed, her gown trailing, but not before squeezing Alex's shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered, then disappeared into the night. The fallout was swift. Diane, tearful, approached Alex, her voice trembling. "I didn't know it was this bad," she said. "I've been so hard on you." "I'm sorry." George joined them, his judge's mask cracking. "I suspected Ryan's games," he admitted, his voice rough. "I should have stopped him." You're better than us, Alex." The words, from a man who'd barely spoken to him in years, hit like absolution. A woman in a sleek blazer approached, her card reading Lila Voss, gallery owner. She'd been at the wedding, drawn to Alex's seascape. "This is remarkable," she said, gesturing to the painting. "I'd like to discuss a solo exhibition." Alex blinked, stunned, as she handed him her card, her smile genuine. As the reception wound down, Elena returned, her eyes red but resolute. "I'm leaving him," she said to Alex, her voice steady. "Your painting, it reminded me what honesty looks like. Thank you for being you." She hugged him, brief but fierce, then left to face her future. Alex stepped outside, the vineyard quiet under a starry sky. He pulled out his sketchbook, the napkin from the rehearsal tucked inside, and began to draw, a sunrise over the vines, light breaking through. "Your Honor," he murmured, smiling to himself, the words no longer a mystery but a badge of his worth. Back in Brooklyn the next day, Alex stood before a new canvas, a sunrise taking shape in bold strokes of gold and blue. The gallery owner's card sat on his table, a promise of a future he'd barely dared to dream. Ryan's disgrace was a fading echo, drowned out by Elena's honor, his parents' apologies, and his own resolve. He painted, the brush steady, his heart finally free.